Thanks for joining us as we take a closer look at the 2003 movie Timeline, starring Paul Walker, Gerald Butler, and Frances O'Connor, otherwise known as...
Fax Me Back to the Future.
Okay, Doc Brown. My name is John Newton, science fiction author, and I'm joined by...
Eric, from your brother in Christ.
And he does look like a brother all dressed like this. This is medieval garb that we put on because this is a medieval story. In Timeline, a group of archaeologists is thrust into a life or death mission when their professor goes missing, only to discover that he's been sent back to the 14th century in France by their benefactor, the mysterious ITC Corporation. With no choice but to follow him, the team is transported into the past, where they must navigate the perils of medieval warfare and rescue their mentor before time runs out. Armed with only their modern knowledge and a vague record of the past, they struggle to find and survive without altering history. Can they save the professor and return home, or will they be trapped in the past forever? Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to real quickly do a book plug. This is, if you have not seen them yet, I've got 4 short stories out, and if you enjoy the type of story that we have that we're going to be covering today on Timeline, Michael Crichton, based on a Michael Crichton novel, you'll enjoy this type of story right here. These are available wherever great books are sold, and my novel is coming out early next year. Also crosses between time travel and medieval times. For free copies of the short stories, check out the links in the description. So we're going to do a spoiler-free version of the movie Timeline first. And you may have, I don't know, it's over 20 years ago that this came out. And but I still like it. I mean, I way back when I got a copy of this and I enjoyed it. It's a popcorn movie for me. It didn't do spectacular in the theaters, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But from a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate this movie?
I'd say probably a 7.
Oh man, I'd say a 7 also. We are just like, we don't plan this ahead of time to say what we're going to be rating this as. But yeah, I'd give it a 7 too. Why would you do 7?
For various reasons, which we'll dive into later. I think some of the story
is it spoiler related that you can't get into, or can you touch on it because this is spoiler free right now?
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to measure. It's spoiler.
Okay,
so we'd have to wait until later.
So so either disagree with me or agree with me on this. I would say, generally speaking, I like the concept of going back in time. You got time travel there, and you got medieval. So for me, you can't lose. This is right up the alley with my, at least the first book in the series. When we're talking about medieval, and the other books in the series, they go on more and more into time, approaching our present time. But so this had both of those, and I think they did pretty well. It was based on a Michael Crichton book, which it got some flack for because it doesn't really follow the book very well. And those who have read it said, man, the book is so much better. Which, by the way, we're planning on doing a review of that book. I picked it up to read again, and then I realized, no, I did read this several years ago. So
I haven't.
So you haven't read it?
Oh no.
Okay.
This is going to be fresh.
So if you have read it, and you say, oh, I want to check out the movie that is based on the novel, you might be a little disappointed because there's a number of places where they deviate from that. We're not going to go into a comparison on it too much, but I would say in terms of just in general, good popcorn movie, enjoy it. Not fantastic, not spectacular, but still enjoyable. And when it came out, it didn't do too well in the box office because it was competing with Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King at the time, and Matrix Revolutions. And both of those, on the medieval side with Lord of the Rings, I mean, this movie couldn't compete with that.
No.
And as far as one of the Matrix series stories, as far as special effects and everything like that, I think there was a lot of disappointment that people had when this movie came out to say it just doesn't really rank up with the others. But still, I think an enjoyable movie. Did any of that ring true with what your grading of the movie was?
It's okay, but not really what the focus was that I have on there. Why I gave it a rating as I did.
Okay, so
Five the Hurricane. Congratulations.
Well, yeah, I want to put this up, and we're getting into frivolous stuff here in terms of grading movies and stuff like that. But there's some people that are actually out there hurting, given circumstances that are out there with hurricanes. Last week with North Carolina. North. I'm going to get my geography mixed up. And Georgia, and now with Florida hitting this massive. I think they downgraded Milton to a 4 before it hit landfall, but it was Category 5. And this was in the same region that we went to a conference.
Yeah. We were able to get to a conference just south of Tampa.
Yep. Sarasota area.
Yeah, beginning of the year. And this is dead center.
It's not right where the eye went through, right?
Yeah, so we'll see if I might be heading back down for that one, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Next year if they still.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear, Thomas, that you have survived. Hopefully we see some pictures of damage, and hopefully it's not too bad where you are. And thank God. So we're going to continue praying for you, for everybody who's going to be hit for it. And when it passes through Florida, I don't know where it's going to track. Is it going to peter out in the Atlantic, or is it going to come back with vengeance and hit the coast again?
I don't know. That's a good question.
So Carol mentioned, she said, I read the book and saw the movie long ago. I know the plots were different and can't remember which I liked better. Time travel is probably my favorite sci-fi subgenre. Yay! Being a history person. Amen, sister. Amen. We don't do a whole lot with I say that I'm a historical science fiction author because when I do I try to do research and do it right for the books that they're in. So the first novel is in 1212, around that time in Spain. The second, well, then there's a follow-up with that. The third novel, not going to say where the second is because it's a bit of a spoiler. Third novel is in about 120 years later in Africa, the kingdom of Mali. Then later on, you hit Aztec Empire and you go like that. So there's a lot of research that goes into it historically. So yeah, time travel rocks. We'll see what happens. And you're going to say something.
Yeah. The movie itself, I think it would have done much better if it wasn't related to the book. If they would have just done their own one. If the plot is so different and the characters are just loosely similar.
Yeah.
Then it would have been much better if they would have just taken the concept, changed the characters' names, and then did a movie without having it known that was in any way.
But that's one of their selling points, though. But if they are going to sell it like that, then
but if you sell it like that and then don't do it well, then the backlash happens where it might have been better if it was just standalone without any backing.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which one not too long ago I was watching that. I was like, man, it would have been much better. And I think this would have done much more better in the box office. That one and another one.
Okay.
If it was not related to the previous genre, but standalone.
Yeah.
I think there's, what was it? Godzilla, the one that was in New York. The one with
I think it was 98.
98. Yeah,
the Godzilla version. If it was just like some big lizard. I don't know. If you have any lizard attacking a city, someone's going to say it's Godzilla.
Well, you could have said that it was a similar. It was one of that type of genre, similar to Godzilla, but not Godzilla himself.
Okay, so this is like an offspring of Godzilla. This reminds us of back in the 1950s,
or another
when Godzilla destroyed Tokyo,
or another kaiju, just some random kaiju, because they do actually use that character later on in a different Godzilla, and he ends up fighting real Godzilla. So
yeah, that was.
And I think that would, if that would have been a standalone, not related to Godzilla, but in the same sort of universe, I think they could have used that as like, okay, this is the beginning of some sort of like monsterverse thing going on, and Godzilla is going to come back later on.
Okay.
I think that would have been better.
Well, it's probably a good comparison. How closely should a movie be related to a book? Well, if a movie is selling itself as based on this novel, or if it's based on a historical event, people would say, okay, how close is it? And I think it's worth criticizing that. We did that with Dune to say whether how close it was or not. We got a lot of flack for it, saying it doesn't have to be related. No, it doesn't. But if you're selling it as this is the theatrical version of that book, then you should be close. Now you can't do everything the same.
Oh no, you can't do everything the same. I think another
Ender's Game. Ender's Game would be an example. It's so much in the kid's mind. I enjoyed Ender's Game. We should do a review on it, but it did not match the novel.
It didn't match the novel, and I understand why. It tried. There's different types. So you have ones that match the novel perfectly. I look at Lord of the Rings.
They did
as far as close as they can, because there's still alterations in there, but they're all true to the source material. Where the Two Towers ended is very different in the book than what it is in the movies.
But you compare that to like the Rings of Power.
The Rings of Power, where you just totally dump it because you don't give a crap. So you have that. You have the ones that try to align with the book, but just can't. Although they're trying to do the job. And then you got ones, I guess, similar to Timeline here, which say, you know what? Those are more like guidelines.
Yeah. So there is some criticism for that. There is some criticism for other things why it didn't do well. I just enjoyed it for the sake of being a movie. It was clean. There was fight, there's blood, there's violence and stuff like that. But as far as, there's some language, but it's on the level of stuff that you would generally see today. It's not trying to push an agenda. It's not trying to, there's no sex involved. There's no nudity, anything like that. I think it's a fun movie that you can sit down and watch with your teenage kids and enjoy it. So there is that plug. So we're going to go into spoiler territory here. Even though this is an older movie, it's still something that we just want to relate to say, hey, we're going to be touching on some things. And let's do this a little bit differently. We're going to bring up pieces of the parts of the trailer and talk about different aspects of the movie. I think actually seeing it does help live action here. So let's take a look at this.
Let's be careful. Who's going in first?
5 young archaeologists have made a remarkable discovery.
So this is setting up who the archaeologists are. There's this dig done in Castlegarde, France, modern day, and they're looking at they're being funded by this company out in the U.S. This tech company called ITC. Why would this big tech company give them money for their dig? Because it costs money to do this archaeological work. And so the professor says, you know what? They keep giving us, he's got this Scottish accent. He said, and I'm going to do terrible Scottish accent. They keep giving us all these clues to say, check out here, do all this work. And he says, it just doesn't sound right. How does he know all this stuff? And by the way, I might be able to ask for some more money. So the professor goes back, and I'm going to show you the cast here. This is who's playing. The professor is Billy Connolly. He is, oh man, I'm not sure I'm trying to think of what other movies that he's in, but he goes back and he basically asks for some money. And then meanwhile, the archaeologists who are doing their dig back here discover something new.
Help me. From the best-selling thriller by Michael Crichton.
Your father wrote that, but he wrote it 600 years ago. What? I just want to know where my dad is.
Your father is in the 14th century. We need you to help us get him back.
So they discover his glasses when they're in the dig. And they say that's why that's why you're wearing the monk outfit with the glasses, right? Funny. Yeah. And then that is the clue that, hey, what's going on here? Dad's stuck in the past because, hey, Dad, his son is part of the archaeological dig, Chris, and there's a romance going on with another character in there as well.
Now, there's some interesting points. So these guys aren't people that are just randomly off the street thrown back in time and just stuck there. No, they're people who are actually actively studying this event in history at this time period.
Right.
So they are as familiar as you can be with us in this historical event.
Right. And they're underneath. It's really funny because they're doing this dig and they're saying, well, wait a minute. This looks like it might be the stable and it's connected here. And they're doing that. When they get back in time, they say, oh my gosh, I got it all wrong. It's not the stables there. It's stables over there. And
I think that is one of the things that I like the most about this movie.
Yeah. So
is because this is coming up in a lot of apologetics conversations where people expect history books or accounts to have a perfect record of every issue, everything that has happened throughout history. And it just doesn't. I'm mostly looking back at the Gospels, how they expect every one of them to get the historical points 100% right, and not realizing that they are humans who are just saying, okay, this is what's happening here.
Yeah.
Their perspective on the events that are happening, not so much that they are there, and they're not explaining necessarily the common things or the culture that's in. You can see that definitely in the Old Testament where God says, go wipe them out. And it's a phrase, and they say, oh, we wiped them out. And then later on you see, oh, wait, they're still here. It's like, wait, what's happening? Oh, you're talking about wiping them from the area, or using a phrase that's, like we would use for football. They wiped them all out. And it's like, wait, hold on.
It was a slaughter.
It's a slaughter. But next week the team's back. What's going on
They
here?
didn't kill him. They did a bad job.
See,
They
the
lied.
book is wrong.
They
No,
lied.
that's again culture and what they're using, the common phrases that they're using. So that's one of the things I like most of it, because it impacts apologetics in this.
It does make a difference here with
example.
this. So Carol said, I remember that one of them was more romancy, and that was the worst one. Well, I think it's probably this one, because there's some cringy. You have Chris has this romantic fling. She is there with Kate, and he's kind of like pushing. It's a little bit creepy with some of his advancements, but at the same time, you do have Andre Merrick falls in love with somebody else, and we are in spoiler territory, so I can say he falls in love with somebody in the past, and that's more organic, I would say, and it does make more sense. That was there. I will say one thing that's awkward in here. I think that the directing really was bad. It stunk, because it seemed like the characters, you watch it, and I've watched this several times, that it's almost like they're forced. They're not really given a whole lot of direction on what to do, or just basically be hyped up. And they're out of breath in some situations. Like, why are you guys out of breath? It doesn't make any sense. So I think it had a lot to do with the direction in there. And I did some reading. There were some cost overruns. There were some other issues that were going on with cuts and stuff like this. And it was a bit of a mess, but still enjoyable. So Carol also said, it's like a movie I recently watched based on H.P. Lovecraft's story, Color Out of Space. So disappointed in the movie. Yeah. And Billy Connolly. So he's the Scottish guy, and I think when I was talking about some of the bad direction in here, I think he comes and saves some of these scenes just because of his warmth of his character and everything like that. Gosh, he's the professor that was in there. And he helps, I think, frame some of the scenes well by what he does. But yeah, he's a good guy. And Thomas Hall said, hilarious comedian, pretty gruff. Yeah, that would be him. And I think he brings some of that comedy.
Yeah, I think his acting is one of the saving factors in this. You're right.
Yeah,
I was just thinking back through the movie. It's like, no. He's one of the better actors in it.
So this is sometimes you have conversations going back and forth in the comment section. I don't always bring those up, but I think this is relevant. He apparently talking about Billy Connolly. Apparently, he had a childhood from hell. Did not know that. And Thomas said, watch the clip of two students arguing the value of past versus future. The grave of the married couple inspired intrigue was a good point that our past tells us where we're coming from, where we're going. Yeah. So there was one point, I'm not sure if they're going to show it here in the trailer. I don't think they do. In this archaeological dig, they come across a sarcophagus where you have a carving of a man and woman, and this is the burial for both of them. And they're holding hands, which they say is very unique. And Andre Merrick, who is played by, and you would know his voice because there are some famous actors here, and they're not top notch, but they're still famous actors. He was played by, thank you for pointing that out, taking out the comments. He was played by Gerard Butler, and you may not recognize the face there very well. He was in the 300. We're talking about the Greeks. He was also did the voice for Stoic in How to Train a Dragon. He was the father Stoic. So you get that deep voice with him and everything like that. So he played a martial. He was a weapons expert, a military weapons expert. If you're going to take anybody in the past, you should probably
that's a pretty good bet.
Take him along. So he goes back and he falls in love with Lady Claire, who is the French lady there. And I'm betting, Carol, that that's not the relationship you were talking about that was off-putting, but the other one that was a little bit more cringy involved. So were you going to say something?
Yeah, that whole thing is very interesting. Again, the aspect of this movie that these are archaeologists and they go back in time, they just do not know what really happened.
No.
Even though they made the best guesses they could at our current time, looking back at it, the whole thing is that Lady Claire dies in this siege. She's executed from the wall at the beginning of the siege. That didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
That was a myth that they believed, but they taught as this is what actually happened here. It was key that she died because then that launched the French into this, frantic attack into it. And no, that's not what happened. They actually went underneath and came up and invaded from beneath. And it's like, okay, all these.
You can imagine how the fog of war is today, or even like what's going on in Florida. You say, well, I hear reports, blah, 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 and we don't really know because there's all sorts of chaos that's going on. Not necessarily that, it's actually crazy down there. But you have these situations that even current day, you don't get accurate records on.
No.
This event took place 600 years before in France. Imagine trying to get accurate records of a chaotic event back then. You could ask three different people. You probably get three different responses if you ask eyewitnesses back then, right?
Yeah, and you almost need to have the eyewitness accounts so you can line them up one next to the other in order to make the comparison. Definitely something that might have happened 2,000 years ago.
It might have been good, hypothetically speaking, to have maybe like 4 different accounts to get like three
different personal accounts, and then one doing the investigation that we would have done in our place there, asking all the eyewitnesses and collaborating
that would
stories.
be a good way to do it. It'd be nice if
that
somebody
would be very
did that.
Convenient. Definitely, if this historical event is critical, and if a god was putting a historical event in order to save all of humanity, he would make sure that it was covered.
No, he would send
multiple ways.
He would send an angel to talk to a guy who is illiterate in a cave. That is exactly.
That's how he would make the
exactly
revelation, because there wouldn't be any way of verifying.
No other way would he be doing it.
What one person says.
Okay, so I'm just looking at some of the chats and see if there's anything else in there they want to pull up. So let's take another look at another part of the trailer. So he's got his glasses.
A journey back in time.
DNA streams all locked in.
What about weapons?
Nothing modern goes bad.
What the hell are we doing? We're getting a chance of a lifetime.
Think of it as the ultimate field trip.
So they do go back in time, and unfortunately, something negative happens. I don't want to have too many spoilers in here, but something negative happens, and they get stuck. And so now, what happened as a rescue effort is become now an escape effort. They've got to get back to the future. Never heard that phrase before. So was there anything in here that surprised? This is so long ago, so I'm not sure if I can say anything necessarily that surprised you. But what would you say is the thing that you like best about this movie? We're in spoiler section now, so some of the things that you were holding off on earlier.
I said mostly it was because of that, because of them not knowing all these events and the details that were in these events. Mostly her death, which is like, it's kind of a big deal, right? If a person dies here or lives, and in fact, that grave ends up being her grave with their friend.
Right. Oh, that was a good twist. I'd have to go back and check out the book to see what it is. We are planning on doing that. We don't do this a whole lot with these movies, but this is one that I think we can pick up and say, hey,
and then compare the two, and
then talk about it. And there is a theme. Thomas, you mentioned something here about past versus future. And when we get to the thematic review of this movie, I think that's something that we're going to pick up and run with a bit. And I want to be able to get your responses for that as well. So let's take a look at another clip. Did I do this one?
Everybody take cover now! From Paramount Pictures,
There's no escape.
and director Richard Donner.
We got 650 years of knowledge on these guys. We put our heads together. We should get out of here in 20 minutes.
So that last phrase, we're going to pick up on that a little bit here and see where we run with it. But I would say the fight scenes were pretty good, but there was some flack about that as not being on the level of what you would see definitely not on the level of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Yeah, but then again, that's fantasy level, and this is not fantasy level.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it at the same time. So you're competing with that, which you definitely should have picked a different date.
Actual medieval warfare versus Gandalf and the Nazgul fighting is not going to be a comparison.
No,
it's going to be over the top with Lord of the Rings versus this. So this can't compete on that level. But they try to be accurate. There's some questions about accuracy in here, like when they're shooting when they're shooting the arrows, they yell fire. One of the commanders yells fire. Well, that wasn't a phrase that was used until later after gunpowder, because it looks like fire is actually pronounced. They would say release or loose. Another command that would be different. Where's the fire? Well, they did have fire arrows that they used.
There's a question of those actually being really accurate too.
What with
the fire arrows?
Yeah.
If you ever launch an arrow, fire gets put out pretty quick. So unless you had something that could keep it going, that's
if you had some kind of tar or some kind of
and at the same time, he's like, okay, we're going to release night arrows. Get ready, night arrows release. And it's like, but those are just normal arrows.
Well, they didn't see him coming. See, they were trying to pace with the other guys. The other guys were the French. Were lighting their arrows, getting ready to do another volley, and it had more to do with timing.
Well, I understand timing, and it was sort of like, this is an underhanded move, and it's like, why is that an underhanded move? I mean, literally, if you're going to do that, what you should do is you should have half of your army shoot the fire arrows so they think that they're coming, and then the other half, wait a second and shoot normal arrows.
Yeah.
So then you get this half and half thing, and you get this alternating going. Actually, if you were to do that with your army, you could actually pin them down pretty good as long as you got the alternating.
Well, yeah, and so these are different tactics that you can see. The question is, were they really used? And this is really tough when you're doing something that's theatrical, because you want it to be exciting. Being accurate is not always exciting.
I mean, and besides, the fire arrows themselves look really good on the scene where they're crossing over each other. Okay, cool.
At night. Yeah.
At night, cool. The only way I could see doing that is actually focusing more on the surprise and horror of just having a bunch of arrows fall on you in, death, not instant death, but pain and suffering. They are falling and you have no clue. You can't see where they're at any given time, and they're coming down.
Right.
That you could sort of go with the horror aspect.
They did use that, and they did have whistling arrows that would give some horror too. I don't think
whistling arrows were
from
Mongols,
what I
though.
remember. I didn't refresh my memory on this, but I don't think there weren't a whole lot of night attacks, right? Just because it was night siege. You would have a siege. You would lay siege for weeks or months or however long it took for their supplies to run out. But were there really attacks at night? Because it's not like you had night vision here.
Yeah, no, there really
your guys
wasn't
could be just as vulnerable trying to cross a field to be able to get to the castle as those that would be in there. It's like it would be counterproductive.
Well, there's some situations that you'd want to do that. Now, I'm not sure in this one what the rush was from the enemy, because they're like setting up, they gotta siege this, gotta get it done now, gotta assault tonight. And it's like, I know they got like Lady Claire hostage and stuff, but
yeah,
I really don't understand the urgency of this. It's not siege warfare. Siege warfare is
you wait them out.
We're sitting here, it's boring for a movie, we'll be here for the next week or 2 weeks just laying siege to this structure. And the only reason you would have a rush like that is if you have another army coming and you know this, they're going to get reinforcements and be able to break out.
Yeah.
If you've got superior numbers able to surround them. Now, the whole thing with going underneath, though,
sappers,
if they were able to say, okay, we're going to go underneath, we're going to open up the gate, let's plan this out, okay, then rush the gate all at this one time. That makes sense because you could end it. If you've got a way around their defenses, you take it.
Right. You had as much problems sometimes with food, supplies, and disease within the camp that was laying siege, sometimes as those who were inside.
Yeah,
they didn't have shelter out there. They'd have to, put up temporary shelter. They'd have to, where are they getting their supplies? They pretty much have to ravage the land around them to be able to get supplies. There's all sorts of things going on there.
Yeah, if memory serves, even like the Mongols, one of the things they would do is they'd take like dead cow carcasses and throw them into defenders to spread disease.
Right.
So they figured out, okay, well, if we're around a bunch of rotten stuff, we get sick. Okay, throw the sick stuff over into the defenders so they get sick and we don't.
Mm-hmm. Not that they understood germs.
No, they had no clue.
They didn't understand germs, but it might have been the whole miasma thing about the...
Yep, stinky air. Okay, everything that makes stinky air go over there.
Okay, so we got a comment here from Carol. She says, have you ever watched the channel Metatron? He's a guy who is an expert in historical accuracy in movies, games, etc. He's delightfully pedantic and a Christian. No, you know what? I want to send him. Seriously. I subscribe to him, so I do know who he is. I do watch his channel occasionally, and I would like to, maybe I should contact and say, hey, listen, are you interested? Would you be willing to read a novel? A novel's going to be long. I mean, first novel is 106,000 words, and so my novels tend to be, well, that's science fiction's fantasy novels. It's not unheard of to have that length. And so to ask him to do that would be a bit of a chore, but I would like to have some feedback. I'm going to have some blind spots on writing this. I am looking for beta readers who would read some of these earlier, not the first one, because the first one's done. Second one's pretty much finished also, but have some readers to take a look at it, Carol, so who would be willing to give feedback and say that, this isn't right. It's a lot better to hear that before it's published than after it's published, because Lord knows I never make any mistakes whatsoever. Because and then she says, so agreeing that it's a good channel. It is. So let's take a look at another part of the trailer. This is the last one that we have here, and see what comments.
A dangerous rescue. The ultimate battle. Come on. For survival.
Let's go!
Paul Walker. Timeline.
See again, flaming arrows look really cool on screen,
And explosions.
and explosions. Which,
Well,
okay.
they were working on Greek fire. They were working on, so this is some of the stuff for the future. They said, should we really give this to these guys if this Greek fire? The answer would have been no, because you're changing the past and all this kind of stuff. This is an archaeologist going back in time and changing the past. Go figure.
Not like they had a big Greek fire didn't really have a terribly huge impact on the actual siege, although it would have if they would have had more time. But the fact they blew it up,
and if they would have kept it for the future, that would have too.
That would have had an impact. But yeah, they got a lucky shot off and kind of. Well, no, they didn't. The main characters blew it up.
So if I remember right, Greek fire, Byzantine Empire, it was one thing that they had used. So it would have been so much out of time. It just would have been transfer of knowledge to the 1300s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not too much. So I just want to make sure that I hit the comments here. Yeah. So Thomas Hall said Metatron would definitely be an honest review. Good. I do want honest reviews. I want to. This is how you can make your material better, right? You do want to hear.
Yeah.
Now,
wish these guys would have had that.
Well,
guys, you're way too far from the book. Everyone's going to hate it.
Well, no.
You need to pick a better release date.
In an order, sometimes in an adaptation, you have to get away from the book because it's
hold the movie for another month before you put it in movie theaters.
What, to get people's responses or something?
No. So you're not competing with Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that would have made a difference. I love his exasperation when things are not right. Talking about Metatron. Boy, we're getting a really big plug for this guy, which is good because he's got a good channel. And then Andrew Martin says, "I can't believe in time travel." Well, what if you'd done it yourself? Would you believe it? I mean, I am your father. No. Yeah. Time travel. Do I actually believe that time travel is real? No. There's certain reasons why it wouldn't be. And it's one of the few things you can do an experiment on before you actually do the experiment to find out if it's real. Stephen Hawking put out a message in secret. I think he didn't broadcast this to everybody, but he put out a message saying, "Meet me if you're a time traveler. Meet me here at this date at 12 noon."
He didn't release it until after.
He didn't release until afterwards.
After the party.
Yeah, and so you could say, "Well, no one showed up," but there might be other reasons or whatever. Do I think it would actually happen? No, I think it would break causality in the universe that we're living in. God has created. I don't think that's possible. There are in my book for time travel, the mechanism that I use is a wormhole, where if you have one mouth of a worm, this is from Kip Thorne, who is a professor at MIT. He had a book that came out years ago where he's talking about if you have one mouth of a wormhole and you have another mouth and you're able to transport it, as if you were to transport the one mouth at near the speed of light, it would be, by the theory of relativity, would have a different time. It would slow down compared to this one. So you have a time differential between these two mouths of the wormhole. And if you can traverse them and not be pulled apart by tidal forces, then you would be able to travel through time. And so that's actually, I think, what they were doing in this one too, because they had one wormhole in France. It was 600 years distance from another wormhole. I think it was in California, present day.
Yeah.
And they were tidally locked. So as one moves forward 5 minutes in time, the other one moves forward 5 minutes in time. You can't go back any more or less than what that 600 years was.
Still never had the explanation of why.
No, because they didn't know in the movie.
They didn't know.
And the book might be different. I had to reread the book to find out.
So, but all in all, I think that it was still a pretty decent one. Now they handled time travel as it's always been. So even all the effects that they went back in history and didn't actually alter anything.
Oh, okay. So we had a video that we did a while back talking about the different theories, different theories or different types of time travel, not in the mechanism of it, but the effect of time travel in the universe, in movies and stories. So there's basically 3 different types, and one of them was fixed. The past is fixed. Is no matter what you do, you can travel in the past, but it's like an Oedipus Rex type of deal. You're doomed to do certain things, or certain things are locked and they are going to happen no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one version of it. And this story, I think, pretty much had this, right?
Solid locked.
Yeah. So interesting ideas, interesting concepts. And another thing you can ask a question too is to say, okay, in the book of Revelation, when John is looking basically into heaven, he has this vision, or if he's actually seeing these things happen, is that linear time? Is that one-dimensional time? We have one dimension of time and 3 dimensions of space. Here, maybe more dimensions of space. We don't know if they're rolled up into each other. But here in the physical world, and we're a subset of the spiritual world that John was looking into, were they all sequential? So that's a question that you can ask too. We don't know. Is that a possibility? All right, some other so Andrew said, yeah, Hawking did that experiment, time travel, and no time traveler showed up. Yeah, he told us maybe one did, and he paid him off. We don't know. But you're right, no one showed up. Carol said, I wish I could believe in time travel. Well, maybe that would prove I'm crazy, but it's fascinating. And Thomas said visions of time travel would be biblical. I'm wondering, are you talking about
prophecies, visions? They could be talking about visions that one gets in the Bible, because technically that would be a form of time travel, being that God is outside of space and time. He's not stuck to our linear perspective of time, and time travel only works if you are stuck. Well, the perception of time travel that we always use is because we're stuck to the linear time frame, but a being that just can move in time as if one can move in a room wouldn't be limited to that. In fact, by his very nature, it would be much easier for him to set up complex events to have an outcome he wants if he could just move back and forth and set it up beforehand.
Yeah. The lamb, Jesus was the lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. You can say that's either that he planned the crucifixion even before the fall. He knew that was going to be coming. He made the choice to do that. That's one way to look at that. The other is that for all intents and purposes, it was something that had already happened, because it's non-linear. But on the other hand, had the enemy known that this was going to happen this way, would they have would they have allowed Jesus to be crucified? They know, no, that's going to ruin everything.
I don't think they have much of a choice in the matter.
I don't think they're as organized as what.
And I don't think they have the same abilities and all-knowingness that God does.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Okay, so it's not like a yin-yang thing with them. Andrew Martin said, I wrote a book involving time travel, but this used a world universe that was drastically different from ours using Platonic forms. I wonder what you mean by Platonic forms. Is this the vision that of the shadows on the wall, the cave that
don't know.
Plato was using? I'm not sure. And then Carol said, prophetic visions give a picture of a future event as if you were actually witnessing it. Yeah, but I don't know if that's necessarily true, because there's so many of them that are filled with symbolism. Like Revelation, it's not just like he's looking into the future and gets these snapshots, almost looking at a trailer, like this is the future trailer. There's so much symbolism in there. I don't think it's the same as just seeing the future. I think, and with the symbolism that's there, it's an apocalyptic form of literature. it has more things, more meaning that's embedded into them than just saying a thing itself. It's like if you were to see just any car, well,
now that's the interesting part, because you're going through a mind of someone who's back then,
right,
describing it.
right.
So if he's looking at a car, he would see a metal cart that would just roll by itself.
Yeah.
So you'd have that. Well, then that would be some of the metaphorical language could be explained that way. It's him just trying to describe what he sees. I mean, when he talks about the beast rising from the sea, is it actually a beast, or is it something else that looks like
it? Could be. There are some people that are saying that about Ezekiel, that he's actually seeing like a spaceship and he's describing the wheels within the wheels. Maybe. But I think that
I know there's a movie that described it that way.
Yeah, but I think more. I think you miss it. I think there's more like what some things that Jordan Peterson says in terms of symbolism that is being used, like a horn. Whenever you see the term horn used in prophecy, like in Daniel was talking about this beast rose out and he had 7 horns or whatever. And the same with John in Revelation. Horns represent rulers or positions of authority. So when a beast comes up, he's got 7 heads, 7 horns. He's talking about leadership. Those are 7 that come on, and also could be related to Rome, which was famous for its 7 hills. So much in there, and even like Babylon itself, mentioning Babylon. Was he really talking about Babylon? We mentioned this before, that he could actually be speaking about Rome, because an oppressive Babylon represents an oppressive power. Rome was the oppressive power at that point. Or is he talking about a future one world government that has oppressive power, whatever the situation is? I think it's it's the nature of prophecy to say, okay, you've been forewarned, haven't told you exactly what's happening. God's in control. Chill out. Follow him. Turn back to him. Cling to him. Do what he says. And then when these events happen, you'd say, oh, that was it.
Yep.
You know after the fact. All right, so we got a lot of chat in here. I want to make sure that we hit it. Christian Sodium channel. Whoa, cool. I can listen while I work. Fantastic, dude. And Carol said, it could be like the locusts, which may be helicopters, as some people conjecture. True, though, that there's always much physical symbolism thrown in. I would say, okay, when you were mentioning locusts, especially like in the book of Revelation, view Revelation through the eyes of the original hearers. So it was written to the 7 churches. That's what one of the basic rules of biblical interpretation. I probably should do a live stream on how to read the Bible for all it's worth, which is a book, by the way, that I use for teaching a class. When you look at the Bible, say, what was it? What did it mean in the original? The people who were the original hearers or readers of that, who was originally intended for it, and then say, in that cultural context, then what would it mean for us? So locusts, look at the Old Testament, all these prophecies talking about the locusts coming out and destroying Israel. They're going to be across the land like locusts. They were always mentioning like the Assyrians coming and destroying Israel, or the Babylonians coming and destroying Judah. These are armies that are coming forth, and the word picture was like, listen, you guys are farmers. You know what it's like when you have these plagues of locusts. All your year-long work for those crops are wiped out in a day or two. And that's going to happen when these people come
fast devastation. Gone.
Right. And so when that comes up in Revelation, you also see this devastation that's coming through. I'm not saying there couldn't be helicopters. It might be. Wow, we got the chat has exploded. So let me see if I can catch up with any of that. Okay. Keep pointing this out. I keep going another 8.
That's not one of my live streams.
No. And we did have our longest live stream was done on Tuesday night. It was over an hour and a half, which
just barely passed the Mandela effect one.
Yeah, because that was another long one. But there was so much material that was in there, and that was good. That was the 7 scientists who were Christian that changed the world. And by the way, if you haven't seen that, check that out, because when I was doing the research on that, I was astounded on these guys were not just like Christian in name only. These were like some theologians that ended up being the founders or the fathers of these new scientific schools of thought, like the father of genetics, the Faraday, I believe, who was the basically wrote the laws for electromagnetism. You have Newton, thank you very much, who, because of him, we are actually do not float around the world anymore because he discovered gravity. All this kind of stuff. So cool. That was just one aspect of it. So, and then, hello, nerds. Ethan Dowdy. Do you recognize him?
Nope.
Recognize him? Hello, nerds. He must be one of our buddies then, if he's going to call us nerds. We love you, brother. I've watched many of your past streams, particularly regarding biblical ideas, concepts being conveyed through popular literature such as C.S. Lewis, Ransom trilogy, and such. Yeah,
that was on my channel.
Okay.
We did that review on my channel.
Yeah, we need to. I would like to redo that again. Talking about the space trilogy and others, which we have copies of those books behind us. And I'm not going to be able to hit all these. I'm just going to look for highlights. Okay. If you see something good, point it out to me, please. This is from Ethan Dowdy. I found such endeavors interesting and inspiring. It's really encouraging to find that others love that, have had that idea first. Amen. It is encouraging to see that. It was really encouraging to see that on the scientists coming out with all this stuff and saying, I just love studying this because I discover who God is and how he has created this world. Whoa.
I mean, that's a real testament to Christianity itself that it's opened up.
Yeah.
Not that it must be true because of these scientists. No, it's just that Christianity opened up that sort of investigation, unlocked that sort of desire for us to know the universe in order to understand the creator and to have it in such a way that we're not discouraged from questioning and investigating, but encouraged to discover these facts about the world.
Yep, 100%. Andrew Martin said, I have a similar problem when I had a dream of the next car we got. A particular detail was car door handle, which seemed to have 2 tones of paint on the handle.
Weird.
He says, I was unable to change it in my dream. Later on, we got the car and I realized it was simply the sunlight hitting the angled surface of the door handle.
Trying to change it.
It won't come out. And Thomas says, unlike Taoism, which explains just how things are, Christianity is a story that we're invited to be a part of, which God is working through time and space.
Yep, that's exactly what I was talking about. That's that participation. That's the inviting to do the investigating, to look into it, to question. Knock and it will be answered. You go through, and if you hear something from in other sections, wherever you hear something from a teacher and it doesn't sound right, you investigate it. You don't just take whatever they say as face value. You investigate it, and then it even gives you steps saying, okay, if he was wrong, here's how you go about, you go and talk to him first of all. Maybe there's just a misunderstanding. If he's not going to listen to you and you're right, go check with another person, then bring both of you and that person together and so forth. And the steps, the procedures built within it in order to try to lead to the truth.
Yeah. This whole concept here is that the Father, the creator of the universe, and we look out, we can't even see the end of the universe as much as more advances with what's the latest telescope, the Webb telescope, space telescope that went out, discovering more things. And it's like, guys, this just doesn't end. We know there's probably an edge of the universe somewhere, but we can't find it. It just goes on and on. It's beyond our comprehension. And we have the God who created that, who says, okay, I want to have a relationship with you. And he has, even though it has pained him to the point of his own sacrifice on the cross to redeem us and buy us back, he said, it's been a painful relationship, but I know it's worth it. And as a father working with us and laying this out for us to discover with him, it's like we're participating with him in history itself.
Well, that's the concept behind prayer.
Yes.
is the opportunity to participate. God doesn't need us to ask or request for things or pray for someone else.
No.
God's going to do what he's going to do, but he gives us the opportunity to participate in our own way, even though it's an extremely small way, but an opportunity to participate in that act. And that's crazy to get that opportunity to do that.
So I don't know how many of you are parents, but if you have a child and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go out of my way because it's easier for me to get this job done myself. I'm going to go out of my way and patiently teach my child how to do this task. I can do a lot better myself, a lot more efficiently. It's not going to make a mess, but I'm going to work with this child, him or herself. And you know what? That's how that relationship is established. And God does that with us as well. I mean, does he need us? No, but he wants us. And that means so much more. You know, even talking about us being adopted as children in Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, he chose us. He didn't have to. He didn't have to do any of this. And that makes it that much more special and amazing. So this is from the Christian Sodium channel. He said they keep breaking the so-called laws of physics with that JWST. James Webb Space Telescope. Yeah, some of these it brings up all sorts of questions because there was it's almost worth doing a live stream on that. We thought things were the way they were, and so we send up a better telescope than the Hubble to say, okay, we're going to get some better clarity. We're going to see more into the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to see all these stuff. We'll get our answers, and it will confirm or break the rules that we're doing. And we put it out there and say, that's not how we thought it was.
Well, that's just it, right? The science itself isn't an answer. The science is the pursuit of the answer.
Right.
So even setting that up and having it just destroy our fundamental concepts that we assumed were laws, and we're like, oh, shoot, we were wrong about that. Now, the question is, are they willing to correct themselves?
So, yeah, that's a good point. So if a scientist is worth his or her weight in salt or whatever, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to be excited. You can get a Nobel Prize if you say, hey, listen, we discovered this is wrong. And that's a good thing, right? Because then you say, okay, I am willing to change my view based on new data. And this data is here. But you hold that lightly. So when we compare it to the Bible and say, the Bible's wrong because it says XYZ and my laws say this. Well, it's either my understanding of scripture that's wrong or my understanding of the universe is wrong, because the God who created the Bible and the God who created the universe are the same.
Yep.
Okay? I know that's controversial.
And this concept actually pushes back to the story, because they had a preconceived notion that the main characters dies in the siege.
We're actually getting a little bit back to this. Okay.
And
but,
yes, this is actually me pulling it back.
I'm going to push it back
topic.
out. I'm going to push it back
I'm
out.
pulling it back. I'm pulling it back.
No. So
save it.
So being willing to adjust it, all right, there was a view of history that said the Bible talks about the Hittites, and in the 1850s, 1860s or so, in colleges and universities, they laughed at that. They said that's just another example of myth being something that's made up, not the other version of myth that C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien talk about. But that's another lie, a misconception that is in the Bible. The Bible is not historically accurate if it talks about the Hittites. Well, you can go to I believe it's Harvard, Stanford, or we went to Yale, some of these Ivy League universities now, and we looked it up, go and take a class to learn the Hittite language now.
Yep. And they discovered, oh, shoot, we were wrong. The Bible was right. And this group actually did exist. And they have their own culture, their own language. Think about that for a second. Hold on. So our assumptions on history was that this group never actually existed, and they were just made up fairy tale on the lines of, Santa Claus.
Right.
And it's an entire culture and civilization
That you can study now. It was one of the
that we missed.
It was one of the three major powers in the triad during the Bronze Age.
That'd be like
Hittites.
someone in 2,000 years in the future or something like that, looking back saying, yeah, America never existed. It was never a thing. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? It's a superpower.
You know what? At the same time, I think as Christians, we need to be very careful to latch on to the latest scientific theory and say, oh, that's just the Bible, just proves. Not necessarily, because that could change in 20 years or so. Or to say that the Bible says blah, 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 when the Bible doesn't actually specifically say that. And I'm going to get myself in trouble with saying something like, I'm just saying, see that theoretically here, that the Bible says creation in 7 days. Is it saying a literal 7 days or not? If you latch on to one or other concept like that and say, this is specifically, absolutely what's going to happen, you might find out that may not be the case. The Bible may not be doing that. And we did we did another video on that saying that, did I do that one or am I planning on it? No, I think I'm still planning on it. Is the Bible a scientific?
We already did a scientific book.
Did we do the scientific book?
We did the scientific book.
Okay.
We did that right after I did it was the Corona scientific. Well, the scientific miracles.
Well, we did. Okay, we did it. We were talking about some other things. I don't know if we touched on that. Okay, so I'll go with what you're saying on it. The Bible is not a scientific textbook. It's not intended for that. The Old Testament is a story about, and true and accurate about the beginnings of Israel as a launch pad for the Messiah, who the Messiah is. We're talking about giving that. It's not a book on chemistry. It's not a book on physics. It's not a Chilton's Guide to the 1973 Ford Pinto. It's not that. It's something entirely different. And when you try to make it a manual for something else, it's going to fail because that's not what God intended it to be. Okay, a couple of comments here before we roll on. How many Pinto cards are still around? Pinto cars still be around in 1,000 years. People say they never existed in absence of evidence. I owned a Pinto. Two Pintos, by the way.
I've never seen them.
They did not blow up. Actually, it was my mom's that I inherited, but they did not blow up. Okay, these were the station wagon versions of Pinto. Pretty poor car. Not built very well, but you know what? They worked. It got us around.
And occasionally blew up.
Okay, we got another one
like
here.
playing Russian roulette.
I want to highlight this. So Ethan Dowdy, and by the way, I want to get more Christian. We're starting to pull them on. By the way, more Christian authors to highlight their works. We had Seth Wallace on the last time. We're going to have more and more people on. Jono has joined us. We've had Ryan Schultz join us. So these are Christian authors, either published or in the process of, that I want to highlight more and more and bring them forward to say, hey, we are changing culture. Ethan Dowdy said, I'm also writing stories of similar nature to the short stories you've written at John Newton Sci-Fi. Thank you for the plug. I'll pay you later. Through more focus towards the fantasy historical fiction genre rather than science fiction. Cool. See if you can contact me, PM me or something.
Email.
Yes, I do have. You can contact me through email.
It's on the channel.
It's on the channel. You can contact me through there. I don't want to broadcast that for everybody because sometimes you get spam. But yeah, please do, and we can hook up. Science in itself, science in and of itself isn't, or at least shouldn't be, an end all. Science is a process and a means of observing and quantifying natural world around us. Amen. Yes. And we did a live stream on how the 7 ways that the Bible supports science, and talking about specifically the scientific method and not scientific institutions or so-called scientific institutions like the FDA and so forth. Christian Sodium Channel said, we did that one, the Pintos. He said, just like people say they have no evidence, They had camels during the time of Abraham. Therefore, it's all made up. So, no.
The last time I checked, there were camels.
There were. All right. So you were trying to actually pull us
Pull
back,
it back to
this.
okay.
We really got deviated from it. So I think we pretty much did the theatric review. We're going over the pros and cons of the acting. I thought was pretty good. They did as good as they could have. I think the directing was lacking, but it was an enjoyable story, even though there were problems. What would you say? Let's get into our thematic section of the review, and this is where we look at movies or books or whatever, even if they're not Christian stories, to say, are there any Christian themes in here? Any themes that we can pull out and share with a dying and lost world to say, hey, this points to Christ? Is there anything that you would say that is in this story that would be a good theme?
Actually, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think we already touched on it pretty intensely, because this is the main reason why I rated it as high as I did. Because you can use this saying, hey, these guys here, these historians, thought it was X, Y, Z, and they were the top of their game in this field, right? But yet they got it wrong. And when they went back, they found out, oh, shoot, no, it wasn't this way. It was completely different. They got about everything wrong about the siege.
I don't know about that.
They got
several points wrong. But
they got the main points, like how the invasion of the fort was done. It was through this secret passage underground, which was actually a common thing to do for some people. Now, they wouldn't have had it open up into a field. It would probably have gone back to someone's actual, like, if you would have had like a king's area, they would normally have it.
Well, they were through a monastery. They came through a monastery.
Yeah, so you have the secret passageway. That's how they invaded in and captured it. The main reason why they did the siege wasn't because of the woman dying. It was because they led them through the secret passageway, opening it up, at least why the siege ended. Opening it up. I mean, they got the French being there and the English being there. They got that right.
Okay, I would kind of disagree with you on that. But anyway, they got a lot of things wrong. So they
got a lot of things wrong. Historically, we don't know everything from it. Looking back at history, and to expect something to give us perfect record of everything that happened, no, we get the highlights.
Okay.
In the same way in the gospel.
So how is this a Christian theme? You're saying
in the same way as the gospel.
Okay.
We get the highlights of the event. We don't get everything they did for, the entire time they're walking with Jesus. They don't give us
to the chagrin of the chosen, because it would be so much easier.
It'd be so much easier if you make it.
They did this and this, and this was on the table, and we're describing everything. Okay, now we got the set made.
Yeah, no,
it wasn't. Not everything is done.
It was the highlights. These are the critical things to get the message across, because the message is that Jesus' death, resurrection occurred and happened, and that's our salvation.
Okay. That's good, because we do need to remember that when we're looking at the historical books of the Bible, it was written by people. It's inspired by the Holy Spirit. It is the Word of God, but at the same time, these are written through the eyes of actual individuals. Again, us participating in God's story, working with the Father on His project. So it's a cool thing. So I would say, in terms of themes, Christian themes, I want to bring this more as a question, and this was the title of this live stream. Can Christian faith and science coexist in the Middle Ages? Why do I say can? Why don't I just say, did it coexist? This is continuing our message that we brought up with the last few videos that we've been doing over the last, I'd say, 6 weeks or so. You had one that was the shocking connection between science and the Quran revealed. Right? And what did you touch on in that?
Oh, where they all the scientific miracles that they claim is there, and I was joined by Adam Seeker.
Okay,
for that one.
Then we did a 5 ways Christianity made the world better. Another video was 7 ways the Bible supports science. We mentioned that earlier, and 7 Christian scientists who changed the world, and that was done last Tuesday. So you see a theme going on here that we're building up. In the movie timeline, Chris Johnson, the professor's son, said, "We have 650 years of knowledge on these guys. There's no reason that we can't get out of this." And
the stupid arrogance of our current time frame.
I think it was, I'm going to bring up 2 trailer clips. I'm not sure exactly what.
A journey back in time.
DNA streams all locked in.
What about weapons?
Nothing modern goes bad.
What the hell are we doing? We're getting a chance of a lifetime.
Think of it as the ultimate field trip.
Okay, it was not that one. It was the one after that, but that leads up, Sue, so we'll check.
Everybody take cover now!
From Paramount Pictures
There's no escape.
and director Richard Donner.
We got 650 years of knowledge on these guys. We put our heads together. We should get out of here in 20 minutes.
Okay, so that one line, I think, typifies the hubris that one generation looks on the previous generation. We're so much better. Is this true? Is this true?
No, it's stupid.
Why would you say that's stupid?
Because the people who got us here were looking back and saying, "Oh no, they're too stupid. I would know better than." No, the people back then were just as smart as we are now. They just didn't have as much of a foundation as we have because they were building it.
We're standing on the shoulders of giants. Is that what you're saying?
Standing on the shoulder
And
of
we're
giants
insulting
that
them at
passed
the same
before,
time.
and we're looking down them saying, "Ah, I'm smarter than you are." So the only reason you're up here is because I did the legwork.
That's a very good point. And this shows the arrogance of believing that the present age is inherently more enlightened than all the previous ages, a theme that resonates with critiques of modern hubris. So we're saying we're better than all the previous, maybe in some ways. I mean, I'm grateful living now because of penicillin, because of electricity. There's a lot of modern conveniences we have, and maybe some of them are actually killing us because we're becoming obese or whatever on many different reasons. But when we're looking back at the past, how many times have we come across somebody, even like looking at the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, and saying, "Ugh, they were ignorant and they were oppressed by the church." We're going to do another video talking specifically about that. But this timeline video that we're looking at right now kind of lends to that because it's showing this, it's highlighting this hubris. When speaking about the belief that the current generation surpasses all others that came before it, C.S. Lewis called this mindset chronological snobbery. And you have to say that with a British accent. Chronological snobbery. He defined it as, and this is a quote from him, "the critical acceptance of the intellectual climate common to our own age, and the assumption that whatever has gone out of date is on that account discredited." So anything in the past is primitive, blasé, Neanderthal, but we're so much better, so much stronger. Obviously now we have the internet, so therefore...
And there'd be people nowadays that would refer to C.S. Lewis's time in the same way.
Right.
So those people who were in that time frame, who were snobbing people beforehand, would get snobbed nowadays. The same mentality.
Yes. So we're going to be doing another live stream coming up. Were the Dark Ages really that dark? And this is kind of leading up to it. When I was doing the research for this, I thought, man, it's just too much to cover. I mean, we're just really supposed to be commenting on this movie, right? So, but I would ask this question: could Christian faith and science coexist in the Middle Ages? Now, we've got the misconception that religion or the church in specifically ruled the Dark Ages, and it wasn't until reason and common sense came around in the Renaissance and threw off the shackles of religious superstition did we actually reach enlightenment, scientific reason, and everything like that. That even though the scientific method was formulated after the medieval times, Dark Ages, so-called Dark Ages, it didn't necessarily mean that during that time they didn't have those concepts available. It's just more formalized into that method. And I'm going to take a look at comments here because this really is a big question that we're going to be hitting here in a bit. I see that there. I just want to make sure that there's nothing else there. Chronological snobbery. Yes. And you have to say it with an accent. C.S. Lewis was really ahead of his time. Perhaps we're just too predictable. Yeah, he had. I think
really good.
I think it might be worth looking at in Screwtape Letters. He had Screwtape makes a is it Screwtape makes a post? I think it was Screwtape makes a post. It was a afterword that he had written.
Toasted Screwtape or toasting Screwtape.
I don't know, but either way, he does talk about some of his predictions of the future, and this was written back. He died in 1963, I believe, just like the day after, within hours of JFK being assassinated, and so he was talking about the next few decades that now we could look back on and say, okay, was
he accurate?
Were some of his predictions right?
Very
and
much
the
so.
answer is yes.
Scarily so.
Scarily so. So when you get down to it, yes, Christian faith and science can coexist and did coexist in the Middle Ages, and we're getting a bigger part of that.
The opposite would have been much more true. Science would not have existed without Christianity.
That's a good point.
Because you don't see this scientific revolution the way it happened with the fervor that it happened with in any other culture.
That's true. The Western culture did set it up because of the influence of Christianity. I believe that made fertile ground where that could come up. We looked at those.
Not saying that there's not any other historical advances throughout any other part of the world. There definitely were scientific advances throughout the world, but not in the same fervor, quickness, establishing how to actually investigate science that we see only coming out of Christendom.
So although the period of the Middle Ages is sometimes portrayed as a time in conflict between faith and reason, historical evidence shows that many medieval scholars, especially within the church, saw no contradiction between Christian belief and scientific inquiry. And we'll be delving into this later. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good live stream, and I appreciate everyone's interaction here with this. This you guys make these live streams what they are because of the comments that you make. You hit things from a different angle, sometimes question the stuff that we're saying, and this is all good. So really looking forward to the next one. And until then, I would say,
yeah, click an extra button. One
there's
more button.
Changes.
Actually, this has always been 2 buttons to press.
Has it? Okay. We'll see you guys.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.